Hey guys, welcome back to Mimir. In this episode, I'm sitting down with Michelle Choi, who's the founder of Bov Active, a golf athleisure brand for women. Michelle is truly visionary, and talking to her, I was so impressed with where her mind is at. It's such an early stage in her business. You can tell she's got a long-term strategy, and her vision for Bov is truly beautiful. And just generally speaking, this conversation was such a pleasure, so I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. She and I started chatting about her journey founding Bove, and I was literally shocked to find out that she only quit her full-time job a month ago. She's gained so much experience since founding during the pandemic, so she and I are getting deep on how she was able to refine and almost redefine her target audience early on through her experience doing pop-ups for brand awareness. Along the way, she realized that she's building way more than just a clothing brand. Her mission is to give women a platform to better themselves. I think she and I really align in this way because she too wants to support other women who are out there hustling for their dream lives. But simultaneously, this was a personal journey for Michelle. She opens up about her experience balancing her full-time job and Bove and why she waited until recently to take it full-time. I think a lot of my other female listeners will relate to her struggle of trying to be everything for everyone and accepting that she was almost holding herself back with this mentality. Later, we get into a fascinating conversation on the future of D2C e-commerce. I think this life path is many female entrepreneurs' dreams, and Michelle's take on the future of the industry is one that I haven't heard spoken about so clearly, and I think it's one that I agree on. So you guys are in for a truly fascinating conversation with someone who I believe is doing something incredibly interesting with her brand. I'm so excited for Michelle and her journey, and I'm thrilled that I got the opportunity to sit down with her and share it with all of you. I'm sure you're going to all geek out as hard as I did. Oh, and before we jump into the episode, be sure to listen all the way through because Michelle is hitting you guys with a sweet discount code for Bove. So without further ado, welcome Michelle to the podcast. I'm so thrilled to have you here to talk about everything entrepreneurship, your business, your journey.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Maddie. So happy to be here.
I think we should start at like the conception of your idea. Like, how did you
For
know?
sure. So I run Bov Active, which is a golf athleisure brand for women. So when you think of golf, like the first thing that comes up to your mind is like, ugh, like men's club, like ugh, like bros club, like
Totally.
boys club, that right? So my background is Korean. So Koreans are obsessed with golf. Like the audience who's like listening to this, if you have any Koreans around you, like I'm sure they're obsessed with
Yeah.
golf. Growing up, my parents are both entrepreneurs, so they were mostly like, it's golf is known to be really good for networking and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
I saw them playing golf all the time, so I was never really intimidated by the whole concept of golf.
Mm-hmm.
So after first year university, my parents were like, Michelle, if you learn how to golf and you're good at it, you'll be like invited and like be welcomed and it'll be so helpful.
Yeah.
So
My parents said the
so
exact same
basic
thing to me. My dad has been trying to get me into
yeah,
golf for so long. And it's funny because like my
exactly.
mom hates golf, but she also agrees that it's like the best way to network and connect with other people.
Exactly. Yeah. So honestly, I wasn't really opposed to that idea. So I started getting lessons
Yeah.
and I was never a team player growing up
Me
because
neither.
team play, yeah, like there's so much pressure. You have to perform. You feel bad for the team. So I was never that athletic to start with. But golf is just by yourself, for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
personal growth. And I just really, really love that. And I could see that like if I spend a lot of time and effort into it, I could see myself getting better and better. I really got obsessed with golf. And what I was really, really obsessed with was the golf fashion in Korea.
Mm.
So the fashion there, well, to start with, like K beauty, K fashion, K everything, like the standards a little higher. That I was really obsessed with golf fashion. It was very preppy, classy, and it was so versatile that I was really obsessed with. At that time, I was like still living here in Canada, so I always knew what was available here in Canada was a little more tacky and like it looked like men designed them, very unflattering. So I knew that, but it was never my problem because I would always go back and forth and play golf with my parents
Yeah.
and shop there.
I would always
So
say that. Like when I
yeah,
would have golf clothes, like the first thing that I thought is I was like, oh, this is clearly designed by a man, without a doubt.
exactly. And if you actually try them on, like the fit's so unflattering, like you look like a 5-year-old boy. You
Yeah,
know what
I
I
look like a
mean? Like
square.
even though your body is exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you. So when COVID, so it was never my problem. I was like, oh, like, too bad for
Yeah.
them, right? Because I could always shop back in Korea. So it was never my problem until COVID hit. And
Mm.
COVID, I couldn't go back home, and I was stuck here in Canada. And in Ontario, the lockdown was really, really long. And golf was the only thing open during the pandemic that you could social distance and get outside, get fresh air,
Yeah.
right? So that's when I saw the popularity growing for golf and younger people also like trying golf for the first time. And because we just want to be outside,
Yeah.
right? So, including myself. So I'm like, oh no, this now is my problem. So that's how I got to, yes, start. And I really, really believe in golf, like what you mentioned. Golf is such a great networking tool. You spend 4 or 5 hours with a stranger and you can get to know so much about that person.
Totally.
And what I love about it is that when you go to like, like any golf tournaments with your management or whoever, like clients, whoever it is, however successful they like, how successful they are, how rich they are, like, it doesn't really matter. You're playing the same sports, you're being vulnerable, you're hitting a bad ball, you're hitting a good shot, like all that stuff that I really, really recommend women getting into golf.
Yeah.
So we do have really cute pieces that you can wear for golf, tennis, pickleball, and every day because I really, really believe in like versatile staple clothing pieces. And yeah, if you check out our website, check out our Instagram, you'll automatically think like, oh my God, this is so cute.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much us. And our mission is to make golf more fun, more girly, and less intimidating for women so they can say yes to golf.
I love what you said too about how, as a woman, especially like this applies to any woman who maybe you're a founder or maybe you work in corporate and like you're invited to play golf, how it almost like evens the playing field. It's not even like if you perform better as a woman, but like if a man also simultaneously doesn't perform, because like context, my dad is obsessed with golf. And so I go and play with him sometimes just to like spend time with him. And
Mm-hmm.
he'll have great shots, he'll have bad shots. And like it does really even the playing field. And I think as a
For
woman,
sure.
sometimes it's hard in the office to, you know, come across powerfully and respectfully. Like I think women just ride such a fine line. And
Mm-hmm.
golf does make it of an easier transition, and it's like you do it's like, as much as I hate to say that my parents were right, like they totally are. It's a great way to bond and to connect and like
For
to
sure.
develop a relationship out of work that is like wholly neutral. So I think it is something, and I am seeing the rise of golf online. I don't know if maybe I'm just being like targeted on Instagram just because like they think that that's something that I'd be into, but like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I have really seen the rise of women in golf, especially like other women going together and like hanging out and just like yapping on the
Exactly.
course. Like I think,
100%.
and I think your concept is really intelligent because there is such a gap in the market. Like, and
Totally.
especially to create something that's versatile across your day, right? Like when I think about what we do to play golf, usually like you play and then you're going to have lunch afterwards. And then like maybe
Mm-hmm.
you want to run a couple errands before you go home. And like to have some, like
Mm-hmm.
I don't always love being in golf clothes when I go out because like the skirt's really short and like, I don't know, sometimes it's just not like the best look if you wanted to like also have
Exactly.
lunch. So I think it's such a great concept and I think it makes perfect sense. How
Thank
I'm so
you.
curious, how is your like go to market been? Have you been seeing a lot of traction?
Yeah, for sure. So we started during the pandemic 2022, and I know your podcast is all about like showcasing and also like sharing vulnerably and like genuinely. So I do want to like straight up like say that when I started, I had no marketing strategy, or I just thought like, because it was during the pandemic and I was still working 9 to 5, that I was
Oh
like, oh,
damn.
if I am filling the gap in the market, we should sell out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, yeah. If we have the product, we should just sell
Yeah.
out. But it was not the case. But I totally, totally like agree about a lot of successful brands talking about community, right? So I started thinking about like honing in on the fact that like how can we really build community? And in the very beginning, it was not easy because like Instagram is not as easy to grow
Yeah.
anymore, right? So I know that like 5-10 years ago is so much better. Just to like post on Instagram, you would get so much traction, but with limited marketing budget, like we weren't getting much traction in the very beginning.
Yeah.
But we really started opening up to our community, like getting their opinion, like what kind of products do you guys want to see? And also this was also I was doing all these pop-ups by myself,
Mhm.
like interacting with people in person. And that's where the community piece like clicked because when people saw everything golf, where when we say that like it's a golf athleisure brand, they're like, golf, like it seems so fun. Like my parents, my dad golfs,
Mm.
my partner golfs, my boyfriend golfs, my hubby golfs, but like I do wanna. It seems fun. They're always out, like, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
I don't know how to start. Like, where, like, I want to get into golf, and I'm like, it is intimidating.
Yeah.
It is for sure intimidating that like how can we make it less intimidating that we started doing more community events
Mhm.
where it's called Sip and Swing where women come in, learn how to golf from actual professionals because like I'm a true believer that like golf, tennis, like any sports, you need to learn from
Yeah.
professionals to get that strong fundamentals. So yeah, that's what we do. Just golf clinics, and also we sip on matcha, sip on non-alcoholic beverages, and make friends and mingle like-minded people. Because I feel like ever since COVID, like people are dying to meet other friends. Like
Yes.
they want to meet people and like
Yes.
do things in person and all these activations and all that. So yeah, community piece really helped us
Yeah.
like hone in our values and like grow further. And of course, if they have a great experience in the event, of course they're gonna be fans. They're gonna be firm believers of Bov Active that they're gonna spread the word to like their friends and their family and all that.
Yeah.
And when golf comes up, they're immediately gonna think Bov Active.
Totally.
So yeah.
I find this really fascinating because this is something that I'm thinking a lot about as I'm like pre-seed, like super early stage, like pre-MVP for my business. And then also today, actually, I went to this really cool tech plant panel where they talked a lot about like go-to-market strategies. And one thing in particular
Mhm.
was not like when you have an idea for a product, you make a lot of assumptions, right? You're like, okay, there's
Mhm.
definitely a space in the market for me. You're like, I know for a fact that women want to golf, but there's like a disconnect between what we're wearing and when we're golfing, and like that's the space that you're filling. And so you're like, we're making a lot of educated assumptions based off of research that like this is a product that women want. But
Mhm.
when you actually start to talk to your customers, I think there's always like things that you're learning that are challenging the assumptions that you made at the very beginning, and which is great because then it helps you refine your product, right? So for you, it was like people want to get into it, but don't
For
necessarily
sure.
know how, or are somewhat
Mhm.
nervous or like relatively ambivalent to say like,
Mhm.
yeah, like I'd be down, but like I don't know, you know? And then
Yeah.
for you, did that inform like your strategy a little bit when you realized that and like
100%.
allowed you
Yeah.
to pivot a little bit more, right? Like, so you started doing community events, but like, what I'm curious to know if there were any other moments where you were like, oh, this is actually what our customer base is really looking for, and this is how we can pivot to fill that need.
So one other thing is community was a big thing for us, but another thing is that we actually did pop-ups because e-commerce B2C, like what I just mentioned, like it's not as easy to get so many eyes on
Yeah.
it that we wanted to. So I believe in that. Like our products are so high quality, the fits, like it's so. If you try it on, if you touch it, you're like, oh my god, I would totally wear this for any other stuff. Number one, and also oh, I would like style it up this way, that way. It's just immediately like if a girl sees it, it's like so many different things.
Yeah.
So I was like, how can we actually showcase these products in person and get more feedback, right? And that would lead us to like more like pivotal moments as well, right? So we started doing pop-ups, and that also gave us a lot of traction, and also it really gave us great feedback and also brand awareness.
Yeah.
So doing a lot of pop-ups, and also we actually want. There's so many different pop-ups that we have done. Pop-up space is something that is very different, depending on the audience that pop up, where it's held,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of like when are we doing it, all these like different factors. So we've also like tested out different pop-up spaces and different seasons to see what works for us. But yeah, pop-ups definitely helped us a lot.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think like for D2C, brand awareness at the beginning is like the hardest challenge to overcome, because once you have a loyal
Mm-hmm.
customer base, it's a lot easier. But to get that is like a grind. And so I would love for you to walk me through your process of pop-ups. Like, what are your learning lessons? How do you even like, okay, so like, for example, like your first pop-up, like how did you organize it? How did you reach out to the place, like finding the venues, setting up the event, reaching out to people,
Yeah,
like
for
top to
sure.
bottom?
I'm so excited to dive into this because I feel like we have done quite a bit, and every single one really gave us big learnings,
Nice.
and I'm very proud of like the growth that we have achieved. So 2023, when I was walking into 2023, I was like, okay, I don't know how pop-ups work, but I'm gonna set a goal that I'm gonna do 5 pop-ups. Like I literally did not know how pop-ups work. And sometimes you just gotta be like really blunt and just like write down a
Yeah.
number. And then magically we did. We did like 6, 7 pop-ups by
Damn.
the end of 2023. So manifestation.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I started reaching out. Like I started like Googling.
Okay.
I'm sure everyone who's on this podcast, the listeners would 100% agree with the fact that like our best friend is Google. Like we're
Yeah.
on Google all the time asking questions. YouTube University, Google is our best friend. So yeah, I just like typed in like Toronto pop-ups because I'm based in Toronto, and bunch of like different vendor markets popped up.
Okay.
So have you been to a vendor market?
I
Like,
haven't.
flea market style? Like there's a lot of like community events, community focused vendor markets happening.
Okay.
I'm sure like there's a lot too. So like basically it's like a vendor market that an organizer
Okay.
organizes. Like bunch of brands come in, and what we definitely learned from that was number one, like the demographic was so different. The target market who walks in randomly was so different
Mm.
than our target market. So basically these like vendor pop-up markets, people are kind of like wanting to browse, like, what are the small little dainty things that we can pick up,
Yeah.
rather than like trying something on. And like if it's like 50 plus, they don't even like $50 plus, like they wouldn't really like look into it, but we did pretty well.
Yeah.
So I every single pop-up that we do, like I go in with the intention of like, okay, this is not necessarily for sales, we're to break even. I know that like the expectation, because like when you don't know, like you mentioned, like expectation, like you go in with some expectation and it could be so different as well,
Yeah.
right? So that's when I walked in, I'm like, okay, this is different. But I got to like speak to people for the first time, like random strangers got to know about our brand, that it exists,
Yeah.
right? So that was a good learning curve. I mean, I was like sweating so much, like for the first customers that I was talking to, I was like, ugh. But anyhow, now I'm like so comfortable talking about my brand, and I'm here too, right?
Yeah.
So I think everything really builds up, and it's an experience. So that was that. So a couple of more vendor markets that we did, and I was like, you know what? Both doesn't really align with like these vendor pop-up
Yeah.
markets, that I want to pop up at a space that brings in those target
Mm-hmm.
audience. So we switched it up, and we did a pop-up at this other location that is always about like community and also like supporting small businesses.
Mm.
So people who walk in are willing to shop and spend money on small businesses. So that gave us a lot of traction. And the whole market called Stacked Market, it's in Toronto. It's based in Toronto. It's like owned by this like big corporation and all that. But yeah, it's an outdoor market. And when I started getting good traction there, I looked into what they offer, and they also do like these monthly stacked storefront grants, where if you apply, go through the interview process and win this grant, you get a whole storefront
Wow.
for your own brand for free. So yeah, so I won the grant this March, like last March. So it was such a good experience.
That's
Like we had a
major.
stunning window display. We got to like, yeah, it's like crazy,
Yeah.
right? Like we had a huge space just for us display. We had a putting mat, we had a mannequin, we had like hanging tennis rackets, and I was like, I'll shut out. Like
That
you
is
guys
so
can also
cute.
find it on our Instagram, but it's so cute. It was like such a dreamy moment. So we had that. So March is also Women's Month, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? Our values are number one, like women empowerment, active lifestyle, community, and also versatility. So that we did, any event that we hosted was all focused on all these things. So like on International Women's Day, we hosted, well, when I say we, it's all me. We hosted, just FYI, we hosted a International Women's Day panel discussion. So I brought in different panelists and I was moderating a panel, and that was such a good success. So like, it's not just about testing out our products, but at the same time, having a space for an e-commerce brand is such a great experience that I got to like test out so many different things and do a lot of events that really resonates with us,
Yeah.
not just related to selling our products. So yeah, so that was that. So that was major. And one last thing that I do want to mention about pop-up is that, so this was in March, and I was like, you know what, we had such a great traction. How can I come back bigger and better?
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I'm really, really passionate about local businesses. This is all through like experience of like participating in vendor markets, because where I got to like meet so many great business owners and passionate business owners, and some of them have like really elevated products and services that I was like, you know what, some of us don't really excel in this
Yeah.
environment because it's all about the price point,
Yeah.
right? So why don't I wanted to do something that resonates with local brands that are elevated and curated, but at the same time has a great story.
Hmm.
So I rented a whole like way bigger space within the same outdoor
Okay.
market, but it was like basically brick and mortar,
Yeah.
right? And we brought in 18 brands, and we did, yeah, it was a 3-week pop up. We had a furniture sponsor. I basically wanted to curate a pop up boutique shop
Yeah.
where people can walk in and like shop, have some like downtime, lounge,
Cool.
grab some coffee, talk to the founders, just like not a rushed experience, more of an elevated and curated shopping experience. So
Yeah.
that was such a success. And we ran 10 community events. I was like, how can we bring these people together and make the community? So we did Pilates, we did pickleball, we
Wow.
did charm making
So
session, and
cute.
all these like type of things that we all love,
Yeah.
that I truly believe that like if we have these events, they're gonna come in and make friends
Yeah.
and also resonate with our brands.
That's so
So that was
cool.
that.
How did you like, I feel like the key for me here is that I feel like as founders, we all have ideas like this, but the fact that you're actually able to execute it, like, especially when you're still early stages and like D2C is so hard, especially like finances, when you have to put in an order and you're never sure if like you just blew a buttload of money and if it's actually going to see a return. And for you to prioritize these kinds of like community events, which I assume is mutually beneficial for each of the other vendors present. But I think that's really special that you were able to bring a lot of these communities together under the guise that it's going to be great for everybody and like it's going to increase brand awareness, visibility, but also sales at the same time. So like,
Mm-hmm.
are you just really good at finance and math, or like how are you doing this?
I would say I am not good at finances and math, even though I minored in math back in undergrad. I barely remember anything, and I majored in economics,
Oh,
even though I hate looking at numbers. I am being super honest. Like, I should be more on top of my financials for
yeah.
sure. But I'll be really honest. Like, up until like last month, I had a full-time job. I was working in corporate. Yeah.
No way. Last
So
month?
basically,
Wait,
yeah,
girl,
I
that's
recently
crazy.
quit. So yeah, I think such a passion of mine, and I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, that I was so bootstrapped, all of my like biweekly paycheck would go into my business,
Damn.
and maybe that's why I
Yeah.
was feeling like, oh, it's okay. And you always hear that like you can't chase money, you have to chase community, you have to chase the values, and the money will come. And also, as entrepreneurs, we know that like we're not gonna make money in the first like couple of
Yeah.
years. We're not paying ourselves and all that. That like I was not trying to like be too anxious
Yeah.
about financials, because like it's only gonna make me feel like depressed
Totally.
just by looking at it, right? So like seriously,
Yeah.
and that's the reality. Like it's not just me. It's not just like any like how most brands are in the very beginning. And also like any businesses that don't really start with a huge following or a huge, if you're an influencer and if you're a celebrity and you're
Yeah.
launching a brand, of course your fans are going to buy it. And of course everyone's interested in what you do. But like, we're just non-celebrity, non-influencer
Yeah.
people who are just passionate and like wanting to fill the gap in the market and change the world, sort of, right?
Yeah.
So,
No, that's so
so
amazing. I'm so,
yeah,
so
so
like that changes everything for me because how are you doing the sourcing and the manufacturing process like while you had a full-time job?
yeah, so the reason why I quit my full-time job, honestly, isn't because I was always thinking, oh, I'm only gonna quit my full-time job if both takes off and it makes 3x of my salary. And like, no way I'm gonna quit. Because I thought I was balancing it so
Yeah,
well, but I was so not. Now looking back, it's like as someone who's like so passionate about the business and everything, it's like it's okay, like 9 to 5, because I was working in corporate. It's like at a bank. So it's very different
totally.
that 9 to 5 I'm working with people who are not really pushing their boundaries. They're only working
Yes.
within the box and only
Yes.
within the like, why are you going outside of the box? That's not allowed type of a
And like I'm not
situation.
getting paid, so I'm not going to go
And
outside of my
yeah,
box.
exactly. And there's already a system.
Yeah,
You have to follow the system that like it's not an option. So I was working with people who are mostly like that. Um then like after 9 to 5, I'm like networking and meeting all these founders and entrepreneurs and who are serial entrepreneurs who are so like passionate and inspiring that
totally.
it was I was having constant identity crisis where
Mm,
I'm like, where do I belong? Like, but then like I need to still get paycheck in
yeah,
order to bootstrap the business, right? Because we're not there. We don't, it's not like I'm making so much money where we're still new and we're focusing on the values, right?
totally.
So we're just getting started. But recently, I've another day, another meltdown. I was thinking like, oh, what am I doing? This is not even serving my purpose in life.
Yeah,
The whole reason why I do this, like everyone's definition of success differs, but my definition of success is not necessarily money and being so rich. It's about being happy,
totally.
right, with your loved ones. And I realized that I was not happy, number one, and I didn't have the mental capacity and the bandwidth to be care the loved ones in my life. So I was constantly working all the time and I wasn't really appreciating life, even though back then I was like, I thought I was,
Yeah.
but I wasn't truly, because like deep down I was not happy. So yeah, I just like literally the next business day, I set up a one-on-one with my manager, and she did not know that I had my yeah. So that's another thing. Yeah, it was a huge burden on me that like,
Yeah.
oh, it's not even like conflict of interest whatsoever. But if you know, you know, like my manager was such a toxic boomer. So like I knew that like if she found out, she would be chasing me, be like, are you doing this? Are you doing
Yeah.
that? And like I kind of had that feeling. Like we have gut feelings
Yeah.
that like, if she finds out it's not gonna work out well,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be convenient for me, that I couldn't even be like posting on LinkedIn. I couldn't even share any of my stories and milestones that we've had on any of our social media,
Totally.
that like except for my personal, but then I was also being careful, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so pretty much that happened, and she's like, did you find another job? Did you like where are you off to? I'm like, just taking a break. I just want to be happy, pursuing happiness. That was my
No,
revenge
shut
deep
up.
down, Until the last day, she's what's your next adventure? We're so interested. And I'm like, I'll keep you posted on LinkedIn. And she's like, I'm not active on LinkedIn. I'm like, if you are curious, you should look me up.
That's crazy. Wait, okay.
But everybody else in my team, like, they were so supportive
Yeah.
that they knew what I was up to. But it was just like that manager was really making my life miserable.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my revenge.
Wait, that's wild because like I I feel pretty similarly. Like my co-founder and I are hoping to go to investors in January, which is like super exciting. We can't wait.
Hmm.
It's super nerve-wracking, but like so I also work 9 to 5. So when I started, I started it like a very entry level role, which I picked on purpose because I truly like didn't
Mhm.
want a heavy mental load. I just wanted something that I
Mhm.
could like tick the box, get a paycheck, and also like have enough time to work on my business on the side. And
Yeah.
one thing after another, like I think what you said about the personality types of entrepreneurs, we're so hardworking. We're low key overachievers. Like we do the things that we don't have to do because that's who we are. And in a corporate
Mhm.
space, that's not necessarily the people you're going to be surrounded with necessarily. So, and, because of me, like,
And I was also working in tech within the bank.
yeah,
So like talking like relationship building within the team, like tech and business, it was just such a different world. Like where I'm like, wait, that's so stupid.
yeah,
Like why are people not reading emails? Why it's literally there in the email. Why can't they read it? Like
it's such a
versus like
different way of living, and over
yeah.
time it gets harder and harder. Like I think I would actually be curious to know how many entrepreneurs see like a relatively high churn when it comes to companies. Like I'd be curious to know, like I guess for myself, I've not stayed at a company longer than like a couple years, and I think that was partially due to the pandemic. Like I literally didn't have another choice. And I wonder if that is because like we get frustrated in those environments and like we have to keep constantly refreshing, so then like it's exciting for our brains. But I think what I thought was really interesting that you talked about was that it was starting to get messy, where like you don't have as much time to work on Bov, and yet you're still in this like corporate environment, and it's not bringing you joy. And
Mhm.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, what I'm hearing is that you realize that success doesn't necessarily mean like a big paycheck. It's more like I success to me is like whether or not I'm happy and having a good time. And that was sort of like the click moment where you're like, I need to just go to Bove full time.
Yeah, so I think that's like also true, but at the same time, one thing that I want to add is because I'm so passionate about I have so much like for example, like when you're in 9 to 5, you're like, oh, if I didn't have my 9 to 5, I could be doing this, I
Yeah,
could be doing that for my business. But you don't have you're like one
I physically
person and
cannot.
like I feel like I physically cannot and like all these opportunities that come up like it's during the
Yeah,
daytime like I'm running out of my vacation days, you know what I
yeah,
mean? But at the same time you're living life, right? I have a relationship, I have to meet my family, I have to be social and also at the same time build a business
yeah,
and like I feel like it's such a different like it's all about prioritizing and I think I thought I was prioritizing pretty well, but what clicked me was that I it's so stupid to say it out loud now because I was so like gaslighted by my manager back then and also I was not happy. But I thought like, oh, it's okay. Even though 9 to 5 is so stressful and it doesn't serve my life purpose,
mm-hmm,
I can fulfill that in my business.
yeah,
But I'm not one person. I'm one brain, one heart,
mm-hmm,
right? I'm one body. That it was this, it was, I thought I was like kind of separating that, but now that I look back, like, how is that possible, right? And my mentor actually told me, he wasn't telling me to quit my 9 to 5, but he was telling me, Michelle, if your friend is in a toxic relationship, what would you tell her? Or what would you tell him? Leave.
yeah,
So I think that really clicked to me. And the most like the moment that really clicked was that oh at the end of the day if it was for money I don't think it was the money. I think it was me who wanted to be that girl who does it all,
mm,
who has a corporate job, who has a
interesting,
business, who has a happy relationship and happy life and yada yada yada. But like I think it was me. Like now that
interesting.
I look back I wanted to be that girl, but I wasn't doing that correctly. And I realized that like I don't if it's money I can get a part-time job or I can get a other job that I was just confused for the longest time, but a moment that just like clicked and I was like super clear.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. I never thought about it that way. I feel like I can relate a lot to that, and I feel like I probably would have
Yeah.
done the same thing. And like,
Hmm.
I think if it wasn't because it was starting to really become like unsustainable for me to do both, like I had
Hmm.
such a great idea today for the
Hmm.
podcast about like how I wanted to take it to the next level. And I was like really excited about it. And then I'm like, shit, when? When will I have time
Hmm.
to do this? And I think it would be so meaningful and like so
Hmm.
amazing. But truly, I'm like, now, when does that get to happen?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So I'm also curious then, like, was Bove in a pretty good spot when you decided to take it full time?
I would say we are in a good spot in terms of like I really want us to. So our next step is to get into wholesale because like for the longest time I was keep thinking D2C is not sustainable,
Mm,
and also like living in Toronto, like Canada, like half of the year is like winter,
yeah,
and the season's like super short. That I was like, how can we get to the next level,
yeah,
right? How can we showcase our products in person? Because what I really found from doing these events in person, activations in person, is that when people see our products and try them on and touch them, the fit and everything, instant checkout. Versus, I feel like Instagram and socials, like they love our content, but it's not an instant checkout. Like the conversion rate for any D2C,
yeah.
right? For any e-commerce. But pop-ups were great and in-persons were so great that I thought, you know what, the next step for us to grow and to grow the brand itself and also for revenue wise, like the next step is to get into different retailers and showcase our products in person, right? And so that more people can try our products and touch the products and know Bove Active. So that's our next step. So I really took the leap of faith, and I'm strategizing what the next steps are,
Yeah.
the high level plans for going to wholesale.
I think
So
that's super
yeah,
interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about this? Because I think you're onto something about like, I think during COVID, we saw like a huge rise of e commerce because it was easy and it was convenient and it was literally the only thing that we had available to us. And then now I sort of see like the rise of in person events. And I think people like want to hang
hmm,
out in person. And even shopping, sometimes I don't want to buy online. I like want to make a day of it. I want to go out and I want to try the
exactly,
clothes on. And like sometimes, like I'm going on a trip on Friday and I'm like, shit, it would have been so nice if I could just go to a store and like try clothes on. But we don't have malls anymore. Like for us, like they're all
exactly,
out. And
yeah.
so I think your perspective is very interesting. And you're the first person I've ever heard say that like D2C e commerce is not sustainable. But I think a lot of the people that I've talked to have similar sentiments or like have that's why I said at the beginning it's so hard.
It's so hard, and I feel like it's not sustainable, like in the sense for early stage
Yeah.
brand that doesn't have the biggest
Mm.
following. If I feel like once we do have good amount of like returning customers, percentage of that.
Yeah.
But once you get into it, you're invested in the brand.
Yeah.
But in order to for brands who don't have marketing
Yeah.
budget, it's so hard to get that one person's
Yeah.
right. So I think if you look at like all these other brands, like we fit into so many different alleys as well, and also for athleisure, golf, everything is just like the more accessible it is, I think it'll be motivating for people to get out there and be active because majority of our customer base don't golf. But what
Oh,
I'm super happy about is that when it comes to like any corporate events or any golf events, they can say yes because in the wardrobe they have Bov Active. And the first thing that comes to their mind is Bov,
yeah.
right? So yeah,
I mean it's crazy
that's
because like
exactly how.
you are really the
Mhm.
only one I've ever heard of doing this and like entering the space and like trying to disrupt this market. And I think you're so right. Like I was just thinking about this earlier today because I think things are changing in that like how sorry, my cat. And how we think about go to market. Like, ideally, it wants to be at the highest growth possible at the lowest cost possible. And
Mhm.
typically, early stage founders have no marketing budget. So, like, for me, it's
Mhm.
maybe like me posting on social media, but likely probably the best way, to your point, is in-person events, like actually talking to people about the
Mm-hmm.
product. And for D2C, like a clothing company, probably like the best bang for your buck is not going to be you like posting social media hoping for like a sale once in a while. Like I feel like social media is great for potential like brand awareness or like top of funnel, but I'm not convinced that it's creating a loyal customer base that's a repeat if that's your
Mm-hmm.
only strategy. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you did it there's kind of like two ways you can go about it, right? Like either you start out and you're like, my strategy is that I'm going to get big on Instagram and then I'm going to launch a product. Like that works. That
Mm-hmm.
has been proven to
Yeah,
work. But if you're
for
like, I'm
sure.
a regular person and I want to start a business, I feel like leaning heavily on marketing is not, or leaning heavily on like social channels is not necessarily the most fruitful, like, it's not necessarily going to be like
100%.
the best use of your time. And like, even
Yeah.
the tech company that I work for my 9 to 5, like we're running into this where it's like the
Mm-hmm.
best way for us to get the word out and create brand awareness in our industry is for sure in-person events. Like I literally work in our
Mm-hmm.
marketing department and I'm like, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
convinced that us heavily flooding these social channels is like going to work for us long term to get to the next phase.
Yeah, totally. And also for like clothing businesses or any other businesses that is like product CPG, I feel like I guess like especially for fashion brands, when you look at fashion brands, like there's a lot of brands that start without number one, like you mentioned, like if you have a big following, you start like no
Yeah,
brainer, you'll
no
succeed.
problem.
If you're an influencer that has like specific like dress style and you launch exactly what your fan base wants, of course you're gonna do
Yeah.
well. But like since we're not that, and I feel like a lot of brands kind of like I mean, this is how I also thought in the very beginning too, where like, oh, similar to how Sporty and Rich became so popular. If you just put out some Pinterest moody stuff, like it's not gonna work. Like nowadays we're all about like community and also values. Like what if you don't do any content that serves you, like they're not gonna be interested in you. If it's just one post that's like bottle pick, like what does it say? Like what value does this
Yeah, that's
bring,
not
right?
different. Like every other
So
brand does
yeah,
that.
exactly. So I think it's so important to like have your strategy and also like we have four pillars that I mentioned, like women empowerment, versatility, active lifestyle, and community. Like for any of the product, like any of the posts that we post on social media or that I post on my personal branded Instagram or LinkedIn, wherever it is, like it has to serve at least one of them.
Yeah.
That's sort of my strategy.
Yeah, because I think like I'm not suggesting like not using social media because I think it's good to keep like top of mind for people, and also
Mm-hmm.
like awareness is king, but it makes sense to you have to have a point of view. You have to have some sort of point of view in the market to get people interested. Like if it's just so that they
Mm-hmm.
buy your clothes, like sure, model picks work, but that's not actually creating a lasting customer base. Like it's not going to be,
Exactly.
that's not longevity. That's just like
100%.
potentially
And also it's
fulfilling.
a model.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I don't look like that. So like it doesn't really serve anything. It's like, oh nice, pretty.
Yeah.
But
Like,
nothing else than that, you know?
yeah. And also, like, for your thing, it's athletic. And, like, I think it makes more sense to have it showcased in context to what, like, it's actually being used for. It's not just like a dress or something where you can, like, I'm going out tonight, like, I need a dress. You're like, this is for girls who want to like improve themselves. It's for women who want to be connected and like to take the next level in their professional and personal lives. And like all that messaging has to be aligned across a variety of channels. But I think it'll be interesting
Mm-hmm.
to see. I feel like we're at a pretty pivotal point in terms of marketing and also like
Mm-hmm.
e-commerce. So I'm really curious to see how things go and like where the industry is taking
Yeah,
us.
for sure. Because I feel like that's also a big shift in like beauty industries as well. Because beauty brands used to take all these influencers on this luxurious
Yes.
travels and only, like serve them like princesses,
Yeah.
right? And like celebrities. And now Refi brought,
Yes.
yes,
Oh my
yes,
God. I was thinking
Refi
about this
brought,
the other day and I couldn't
yeah,
remember who
the
did it.
whole, Yes, we're fine. Jessica
Yes.
Hunter, yeah, love her.
Yeah.
But yeah, what they did is like bringing the community members and doing the same thing. And I feel like as a brand owner myself, I think that's not exactly what we're doing, but at the same time, we're thinking about we're treating these people, we're giving values, we're educating our community members who come to our sip and swing because these are the people who actually want to invest in themselves and their girl bosses and they invest in their life and wellness and happiness and having a hobby is like such an amazing thing too. And these people like these girls just come by themselves and like how amazing is that,
Yeah.
right? You make friends, you're so open minded and those people are the ones that I really want to serve and that's who I am as a person. So it's so interesting to see how like-minded just like-minded people just come together. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
think it's also really interesting that the way that you're talking about your customer, I think is going to be much more prevalent. Like when I think
Mhm.
about the beauty of small business, it's that proximity to the customer and to the product that the founder has. Whereas like big enterprise companies don't have that. Like as a CEO, you're
Mhm.
so disconnected from your product and from your customer. And I think that's why people are more interested in buying from small businesses because of that. And like, I think something that I've been thinking a lot about, and as entrepreneurialism rises, as small businesses tend to rise, like inevitably there will be similar companies, right? Like you're going to enter some sort
Mhm.
of a like
For sure.
a pretty saturated market. But
Mhm.
that's not to deter. The thing is like we'll all have key differentiating points. And I think like the big ticket for me lately that I've been mulling over in my head is like how do we treat our customers? And like how do you talk about them? How do you talk to them? And hearing
Mhm.
your take on that is really interesting because you're like these are not just people who are giving me their money. You're like, I want to
Mhm.
help improve their lives holistically. You want to give them
Mhm.
space and a platform to grow and be better. And that's like so much more than just clothes.
Yeah, 1000%. I'm so glad that you like understood our mission and like what I'm doing because I feel like golf is also a very saturated market. If you look up, like, I feel like since golf is so male dominated, if you look up like golf polos for men, oh my goodness, there's so many
Yeah.
brands, like it's probably a dream for like any other guy who golfs. We're like, I wish I had a golfer brand, you
Yeah.
know? So I feel like it's so interesting to see how like men's golfers like also very saturated,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, women's golfers like rising, but it's getting saturated. But how we differentiate ourselves is so different because we're not targeting like Bov Active does isn't our target market isn't who already golf or who are in their 40s or 50s or 60s and above. Our target market is young professionals.
Yeah.
Young professionals who I really, truly, truly believe that like these are women who are gonna be seated with like all these other CEOs, management level. And I truly believe that because like through a lot of like pop-ups that I did, like I'm like, oh my God, women are hustling on weekdays, weekends, everything. And like men are just probably watching TV on the couch. But like seriously, like my boyfriend, every time he like comes and like helps out, he's like, wow, women, like that's so
I
great.
love
Like
that.
these are
Yeah.
hustlers, right? It was like a very eye-opening experience for him.
I
But
love that.
yeah, but pretty like that's exactly where I want to serve. I feel like if we targeted people who already love golf and like people who already have disposable income, like so much disposable income that like buying another piece of clothing isn't anything, then like I think our brand could have been like on the growth path like even faster.
Mm.
But I feel like my passion and my mission isn't that. I really want women to get into golf,
Yeah.
right? Like take that equal opportunity as men. Because when I was a student, like back in undergrad, my last year university, I was like job searching, networking, and all that. And my friend who was at this like student organization, they were actually hosting a golf tournament, and it was like most of them were management people, people who are working in corporate business owners. And I showed up because like she's like, oh Michelle, you golf, do you want to come? I'm like, of course.
Yeah.
I showed up. I was the only student. Of course, back then that was like way long time ago. So like I was wearing my whole outfit from like Korea,
Yeah.
right? So I look professional. I look like what I'm doing. No, I look like I know what I'm doing. And at the same time, my swings probably better than like 90% of the guys who are
Yeah.
there. And they're like, who is this
Yeah.
girl? But not in a pervy way,
No,
more
like
like how
impressed.
we, yeah, when we network with as a student. And I feel like as a woman, like that's exactly where we need to show up. We have such great skills, like soft skills that we're so nurturing. We're such a good
Yeah.
listener and so many different things that you could showcase all these things in a very male dominated setting and really glow there, like you're like, who is this? Like all the highlight, all the attention on the women is what I want. And I'm like, girls, like I was actually speaking at a panel in the university that I went to last week. I went back to speak at a panel, and like these girls who are like what 10 years younger than me, I'm like, girls, if you're in like they're in commerce, so they want to get into finance, where all these different male dominated settings. I'm like, you gotta start now. You gotta like compete with 6 feet, blue eyes, finance bros. Like you gotta show
Yeah.
up, and like you gotta look professional. You gotta know what you're doing and get the deals, get the meetings. You're gonna be invited again. And I feel like one thing that I forgot to mention is that you don't have to be the best golfer in the world. I feel like you would also resonate with what you mentioned, that your dad would hit like bad shots, but it's like it's part of the golf round.
Oh
It's
yeah.
part of the game, unless you're Tiger Woods. And also Tiger Woods can also miss shots, you know what I
I
mean?
have done it before
So
where like I've gone out with some of my dad's friends and like I pick up the ball. Like I come into it and I'm like, I'm not
thank
that good,
you.
but I'm here for a good
Yeah,
time and like we're gonna schmooze and we're gonna like chat and it's gonna be super fun and like
exactly.
I'm positive like I would be invited again. Like it doesn't. You're right. Like you don't
Exactly.
have to
So that's
hit.
what I'm telling
Yeah.
women. You don't have to be the best player. All you gotta do is bring the good vibes
Mm-hmm.
and know the etiquette. Like if you're hitting a bad shot, just pick up the ball, back into the cart, and you're not disrupting the whole like pace of play
Totally.
or look dumb is like the least thing that I want. So like in these like community events that we do, we like the Bove girl is like someone who's like knowledgeable and confident,
Yeah.
like so I really want that to be aligned in like any socials that we do, like any event, any activations. Like I really want all these like messages to be consistent in all of our platforms.
I think this is great. Like to hear you speak so confidently about exactly what you guys are about. Like it's more than just clothes, and to know
Mm-hmm.
that that high level vision then trickles down into everything that you do. I think you're in a position that not necessarily a lot of other people are in at this stage. I think they're still trying to figure out like what they're doing here and how they can serve their community, especially because I think people are just worrying about sales, where it's like you're like, no, I have a
Mm-hmm.
vision and it's like a greater purpose as opposed to just like making the next sale. And I think that is like how you know that that there's longevity there, that this is like a
Mm-hmm.
long-term progress
For sure.
that's going to be sustained over years. And I think that's amazing.
Thank you. And I think a lot of I do get a lot of questions like, oh, like influencer who like we talked about, like who is building a brand, like do we have to know what values we need to serve prior to launching a brand, right? I didn't have this mission.
Yeah.
I thought since the gap in the market was like for young professionals, I thought if we had the MVP,
Yeah.
then like I thought we were good. But like all these things kind of like came after as we did pop-ups and as we interacted with customers and try to figure out what is lacking, how can we serve our community, like all these things came after, I would say. So like I think that's also another thing that I wanted to mention. You don't have to like have everything figured out when you just start, You can figure it out as you go, and you never know who you will be serving.
Yeah. Michelle, I think that was like such a perfect mic drop. That was like the perfect bookend to close the episode. Thank you so much. That was so much fun. That was incredible.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun.
Thank you guys so much for listening. All the links to connect with Michelle are down in the show notes, and be sure to go and show Bov Active some love. Use the discount code MIMIR15 to shop. That's MIMIR15. Michelle is so sweet to give you guys a sweet discount code, and her products are truly fantastic. Even if you're new to golf, or even if you're just looking to have a cute athleisure brand in your wardrobe, be sure to go show Michelle's brand some love. If you guys are enjoying the podcast, hit that 5-star rating, and if you're feeling up to it, leave a kind review. If you have questions you want answered, comment them in the reviews and I'll answer them at the end of the episodes. And if you want more from me and Mimir, follow me on social media at Hi Maddie Kelly. Check out the YouTube channel to watch the podcast. You can also head to my website, mimir.ink, for my contact info, partnership opportunities, key takeaways on all the episodes, etc. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you guys next week.